Welcome back to Outside Views, and bro, we need to talk. And we need to talk about Brexit again, yeah? And today we can do that with a very interesting example of something that happened here in Germany because of Brexit. And you could call it a £1 million problem on the Autobahn, because there was quite a noteworthy case. There is a story of a valuable £1 million Bugatti T39 from 1925. And that was being stopped by German customs on a highway rest, or what do you call it? Rest stop, is it, I guess. And that near Dortmund. That's not very far away from where I am living. And the reason for that was the old-timer was traveling from the UK to Denmark, but was missing the necessary customs paperwork. You know, since Brexit, there's a lot of customs paperwork involved. And the whole thing is a perfect illustration of how Brexit bureaucracy is affecting even high-value, what somebody might call rolling cultural heritage. And the consequences were, well, because of the missing documents, customs demanded a payment of 70,000 euros in import VAT. That's 7% of the vehicle's value. The car was seized and a tax evasion investigation was launched. So it really shows that we are at a tipping point, because the report suggests that this is not an isolated incident. Instead, it highlights how Brexit has become a bureaucratic tipping point, bringing to light a new set of rules that have significant consequences, and new only to the UK because they have recently become a third country with regard to the EU. For other third countries, those rules were there while the UK was part of the EU, and they even created some of these rules. But for Britain, there is now the new reality of post-Brexit trade. Before 2021, to be exact, before January 2021, the UK was part of the EU single market, and a car like the Bugatti would have passed through completely unnoticed. The free movement of goods was standard. And now they have the third country problem. And once again, because I see that in the comments that some people still don't get the difference between a third country and a third world country. Nobody is saying that Britain is a third world country. But, okay, almost nobody. But Britain is a third country from the point of view of the EU. They are not part of the EU, so they are a third country. And since Brexit, the UK is, of course, treated as a third country for customs purposes. And this means classic cars now require the same documentation as new cars or any other expensive goods. I know from all the discussions we had about traveling and everything that there's a lack of awareness. Because the problem is there that many collectors, drivers, and event organizers are unaware of these new rules. And they completely underestimate the consequences of not having the proper paperwork. There is a solution called the Carnet ATA. That's a document, kind of an international passport for goods that allows for temporary duty-free import for up to 24 months. And the Bugatti was missing this exact document here. And there nowadays is for them the new strict enforcement that we had in place for other countries anyway. And there is no room for leniency. The Bugatti case shows how strictly customs officials are enforcing these rules. There is no grace period for submitting documents later or something like that. There is just no leniency. And it does have serious consequences. The penalties here are severe. As you've heard, it's seizure of the vehicle, criminal proceedings for tax evasion, and a security deposit equal to the potential customs debt. So this car just went from passion to a problem. And for many others it does the same, because for event organizers and collectors, a failure to prepare correctly can quickly turn a piece of this rolling cultural heritage into a multi-euro, multi-pound problem, or multi-million pound or multi-million euro problem. And despite everything that was claimed about more freedom and everything, we now have more paper and less freedom. Because for collectors and organizers, border crossings now require more paper than petrol, to put it that bluntly. Yeah, this is really a showcase for what Brexit brought for the everyday freedom of people. We talked about a lot of residencies, a lot of emigrating to the EU from the UK and everything, but there's so much more. We talked about artists touring the EU from the UK. So much got more difficult. People from the UK lost a lot of their freedoms in the EU that they had before Brexit. That the majority of the people voting on a day of the referendum just voted away. But everybody lost it. Even if they didn't vote for it, they lost all those freedoms. And now, traveling to the UK, to the EU, living in the EU, touring the EU, and many other things have just become far more burdensome. And of course, I wanted to pick a case like this, which is a bit more interesting, because not everybody is trying to drive a Bugatti through the EU every day from the UK. But it just shows how expensive these things can get. Because in case if you are caught without the papers, or if you're trying to bring something, it's the same with the airport. If you bring something that you've shopped in another country outside the EU and come back home into the EU and have that in your luggage, and you're not declaring that stuff, as it happened with a car as well, which was introduced into the EU, usually the penalty equals the amount of tax that you try to evade in that case. So if you would land on an airport here in the EU, or here in Germany, that's where I know it best, from outside the EU, and you have bought something that's worth 70,000 euros, which happens regularly as well with gold and jewelry and stuff like that, and do not declare it, then you have to pay the 70,000. I mean, that's where you have to pay 70,000 in taxes. Then you have to pay 70,000 in taxes, and another 70,000 as a penalty. Although in cases like that, usually it goes to the courts. If it's something that you bought that is, let's say, 1,000 euros, and then you would have to pay, let's just say the standard VAT here is 19%, so 190 euros. If you brought that in but didn't declare it because it's above the level that you can bring in for free, then you would have to pay another 190 euros in as a penalty at the airport. In case of 70,000, that will go to the courts. That will not just be a penalty from customs at the airport. But that just shows customs always was strict. Before Brexit, it was the same, even for EU citizens coming from other countries. So if you're from the UK bringing something expensive into the EU for whatever reason, check if you need papers for that before you do that. And I hope, despite showcasing Brexit once more, I could bring some awareness once again to people. Always inform yourself before traveling what is required from you, especially if you're now going to a third country, which every EU country now is, and so you don't get in trouble. And let me know in the comments if you have experienced something like this, maybe not with a Bugatti, but in smaller cases. And if you want to see another video right now, the next one is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.